we publicized this interview, some of the reactions that we received were quite hostile on your person. And I'll read some of those responses that we got. One said, cancel that interview. Another one said, not worth my time. Another one called you a butcher and a murderer. Another said, who killed protesters under his leadership? Now, why would this interview generate so much hostility on your person? And why do you think Kenyans feel tonight whatever you have to say is not of value to them?
First, I appreciate and thank you for having me on this broadcast. It is, maybe I start by saying that not everyone is saying what you read out. There are others who are saying other things. But that is still okay because it is the right of the people of Kenya to express themselves on what they think about their leaders, especially political leaders. And therefore, mine is to confirm that because I've been in public life for a while, in various capacities, I have endeavored to do my best to my country, and I have no regret for anything. Maybe lessons learned, which is a common human thing that perhaps there are things I've picked along the way. But in terms of my public duty and commitment to our national interest, I have been extremely clear on what is expected of me in the various roles that I have played in this country.
As Interior CS, where Kenyans feel that you oversaw massive brutality on Kenyans who are expressing themselves when they felt that their leaders were not representing them in the way that they should. Do you take personal responsibility for the murder of 60 people, according to the KNCHR?
Well, the violent protest that took place early this year, and even earlier on in 2023, unfortunately led to loss of lives. Some of those lives were lost in various ways, including through police action. I have no reason to take responsibility for anything because the space of violence and encounter with law enforcement is a space which is defined by law. And the role of the Minister for Interior is defined in the Constitution, Article 245, on what that role is. And that role includes providing policy guidance to the organs of internal security. The role of police operations are protected through the mandate of independent command of the Inspector General, and therefore police operations, especially in engaging protesters or people who are seen as breaching the peace, is the province for the independent command of the National Inspector General of the National Police Service. As far as I'm concerned, the 2 years I have been the country's Interior Minister, every single day of them, when I woke up to do my work, to make sure that the security organs of our country that protect our country from threats, security threats, perform their work, and should they require any policy guidance, that guidance is provided. And that's all what I can say for now.
So you're saying tonight that you have no say whatsoever when the police misbehave?
The Interior Minister has no role in police operations, according to Article 245.
So you have no say whatsoever when they go wrong as a professor of law?
I have a say, and I said it. And the say is this, that police officers are allowed to use force, including lethal force, in exceptional circumstances. Should any officer violate the strict parameters of those circumstances, they are accountable under the law. And we said many times, not once, not even in the context of the protests alone, but also in the context of the fight against terror and the fight against banditry and other organized crime. That any police officer who uses their firearm lawfully within the Constitution, including lethal force, has legal protection. But so any of them who exceeds the parameters of the Constitution is on their own, and the organs of accountability is not the Interior Minister. It is the agencies such as IPOA and the DPP and the rest.
So who shot at David Chege at the precincts of Parliament and Erickson Chalo Mutisia? These two young men were not armed. Would you say that use of live ammunition was reasonable?
I think the matter of the violence that occurred in Parliament and the unfortunate loss of life is a matter that which is actively being investigated by IPOA and other agencies. So it would be preemptive for me to tell you who shot the two Kenyans who unfortunately, according to the records, lost their lives in that context.
So how far are the investigations? You're the DP now. You may have moved on to a different role, but it's definitely senior to
I'm aware that there are two ways of conducting investigations. One is through the internal affairs unit of the police. But our policy in the last 2 years, while we were in that docket, we discouraged the internal affairs unit of the police from being the ones to investigate their colleagues because it raised perceptions of bias. So we encourage the Independent Police Oversight Authority to be the one to do the investigations. The report I had when I left the ministry is that they had made some good progress. They reported to me they had some 6 files which are ready from the context of the riots and the violence around that time. But there has been a transition in the leadership of IPOA right now. A new commission has just been put in place. And the work of IPOA is led by commissioners. It's not led by the secretariat. So the delay in the last 2-3 months could be associated to the leadership transition by IPOA.
Ashley and George, have follow-ups. Ashley?
All right, Your Excellency, you have made a name for yourself as a defender of human rights. Are you proud about the events that occurred in June this year? I mean, this led to deaths of young, innocent Kenyans. Where does this sit as, to you, the professor of human rights, not as the deputy president, but as the professor of human rights?
Any Kenyan, not to mention a professor of law, who would be proud by what happened in our country, June, July, from whatever angle, would be inappropriately doing so. Because those events were extremely painful to the country. They were unnecessary, if I may say so, because there is a way of processing democratic encounters, and there's a way in which the balances between the protection of public safety and the expression of individual rights and freedoms must help us navigate peaceful and orderly society. So to answer your question, I wouldn't be proud at all.
Mr. Deputy President, then what did you have to say to families who are still looking for their loved ones? For instance, on X, we were tagged and someone said, I always communicate with Peter Masharia's mom. Imagine she wakes up every day to go to the mortuary. Peter Masharia went missing on the 25th of June. Tonight, what do you tell those families that are still looking for their loved ones?
To the families who lost their loved ones or whose loved ones are still missing, I would say that it's unfortunate that this country went through what it went through in June, July. I hope that our country has learned the lessons and we will not get there again, because losing a loved one, having a loved one missing for months, almost half a year, even for a day, is extremely painful. And therefore, as I said when I responded to this matter earlier on, maybe not on this forum, it is very unfortunate, and we, including myself, regret that our country went that direction and hope that we will not get there again.
Yet when they look at you, Professor, they say you are the face of, disappearances, abductions, deaths and murders on young people in this country. Do you feel that you're struggling to shake off that tag?
Not at all,
Okay.
because it is not true. So I don't struggle at all.
So then,
Your Excellency, the families that were bereaved pleaded with the government of the day to help them with burial expenses. Did that happen? How much was spent? And there was a committal to compensate families that lost their beloved ones. What's the status of that, Deputy President?
To the best of my knowledge, a number of families were given modest ex gratia support on a request basis and on a basis of confidentiality, because what the state does in a situation like that, when there is distress in the country, citizens are facing distress, we go out of our way for ways of supporting. But normally that support is support which, first of all, is not budgeted for, so we have to look for ways of, within the security budget, absorbing some of those costs. And if I recall well, a number of families were supported on an ex gratia basis. The question of compensation is a little more complex and will require guidance, because no law would allow expenditure on compensation for events similar to what we had. I am aware, even in more extreme cases like terrorist-related deaths and injury, it is anticipated that victims of terrorist crimes and other violent acts would be compensated. And I think when we left the ministry, we were trying to develop regulations on the operationalization of Section 49 of the Prevention of Terrorism Act. And I think that can form a basis of thinking of how else or in which other circumstances perhaps extreme cases of loss and injury could be compensated. So that's a discussion we are having, and I am more than willing to follow up. Even in my new role, nothing prevents me from following up and ensuring that in justifiable cases which are defined by law, where injury or loss happens and the law allows, then compensation can ensue.
So this evening you are telling Kenyans that the bereaved families will have to wait longer until the law is developed. And I'm not actually asking for specific families. These are public resources for purposes of accountability. Once again, how much was spent to settle the burial expenses?
I wouldn't know, because it's not, there is no vote called burial expenses. There's no vote like that. So this is ex gratia support, not just for these cases. Many other cases every day that the state deals with are done ex gratia within the security operations budget, and therefore it's not possible to pinpoint this amount was used for burial because of the lack of a specific vote line.
On the time frame for compensation?
What about?
What time can they wait? For how long can the law be developed?
I am not sure, but we will do our best to make sure that cases where we form consensus, national consensus that require compensation, are onboarded, because even in the extreme and glaring cases of terrorism, I've told you, it has taken, I think now, quite a number of years since we enacted the Prevention of Terrorism Act to operationalize that section. So I'm hoping perhaps within the year, within the coming year, we can work with the new leadership in that ministry and other stakeholders in the normal way government works and process perhaps regulations on the operationalization of some of these issues. As to whether that can be expanded beyond terrorism-related incidents, that is a discussion again which we can open up to stakeholder input and have it dealt with.
It's clear, Mr. Deputy President, that the tag behind you, and you know, my colleague Mashima Kapombe mentioned it when we mentioned that we were having this interview, is not a very rosy one. And one person in particular called you the butcher of terror.